please put your hands together to welcome none other than Mr. Manish Tiwari, the Chairman and Managing Director, Nestle India. Well, good morning, sir. What a pleasure indeed. Thank you so much for joining us. I know everyone's waiting to hear from you, but before they get to ask you questions towards the end of the session, I'd love to ask you two questions as well. Superb. Absolutely, absolutely, sir. Well, I have the rare opportunity of
Go ahead.
asking Manish some questions, so let me go ahead. Now, we all got to understand our favorite offerings from Nestle. Now, there are plethora offerings from Nestle, so if you could pick one of your favorites, which one would that be?
Oh, I drink like 16 cups of black coffee every day. So it's Nescafe Roastery. And all my health metrics are looking better after I've joined Nestle. So that's my advice to everyone. But it's difficult to pick up one child. And I have equally fond memories of Milkmaid and Maggie, of course. So I met my wife over Maggie at IIM Bangalore.
Oh,
So
lovely.
these are,
See, can we have a round of applause? Because this is what Wikipedia does not show us, does not share with us. And that's what an interaction does. Just last two questions. I've also been apprised that you're an avid runner and that you love to travel. So, Manish, what's your favorite destination if you ever want to unwind?
I was at Bhutan a couple of weeks ago. It was awesome. It's nice, neat, clean. You get a chance to interact with nature, and people there are very, very friendly. So that's the latest one, which I really cherish.
And that's why we can see the gross happiness quotient right over here. My last question. Are you all aware that he's also an avid golf player? Yes? I've been told that you also play golf.
Yeah, there is a difference between a good golf player and an avid golf player.
All right. But is there one lesson that you'd like to share that probably applied to you in the industry or in your leadership style as well? Something that you learned from golf?
I think we were just speaking about it before this. Golf is a game of the mind. So for everyone in business, sometimes you have a bad week, a bad quarter, or a bad month on market shares. You try harder, and the next month goes worse. So golf is like that. If you have a bad shot, you overthink it, and the next shot is worse. So it teaches you to take a step back, rethink it, and then play. So
Wonderful.
that's
Can we have a special round of applause one more time for Manish Tiwari? Thank you so much. And with that, over to you.
Thank you, thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, Monica, thank you for inviting me for this forum. I am someone who's been out of CPG for a decade, so a lot of what you were talking about um, brought back old memories about the role of various functions. I also was in a tech industry where marketing, the traditional marketing was called fixed marketing because you didn't know what the results or the output of that investment was. Um, I think for me, there were a couple of mentions in the earlier part of the discussion about who is the most important person in an organization, who plays a more definitive role in shaping the strategy of a company. And in my humble opinion, it's not about designations, it's not about the function you are in, it's about who represents the consumer. Yeah, and the way a marketing job is defined, almost by default, uh, the chances of the marketeer being closest to the consumer is always the highest. And yes, the only opinion, at least for me, which matters, I always say this to my team, and Varun and Ghazal are here, that the day internal opinions start trumping the voice of the consumer, the company is in danger. Yeah. So with that, let me jump onto the topic. I found it very fascinating, and I asked Varun that what's the commonality between marketing and being a multiplier in terms of uh, the market cap. Um, I think it's quite simple. Um, on a lighter note, I keep on telling my marketeers that given the multitude of choices we have, the investment options we have, the fact that even measurement of some of these options is a science which we are still building. The marketeer, the CMO, Varun in this case, is like Edward, my CFO. It's just that they are nicer to people and they usually have more expensive taste when it comes to whatever your single malt or your wine. But the role of a CMO is not very different from the role of a CFO. And since we are talking about finance professionals, and I know the old time marketeers did not like it too much, the new age marketeers are very comfortable, I thought I would start with this. For all of you who've been in business long enough, there is this whole thing about what creates enterprise value. Yeah? And different people have different ways. But if you asked a chief investment officer of a mutual fund, they would probably come with the first part of the left-hand side of the equation, which is the G into P, because they look at what is the growth and what is the growth in margins. Yeah. But for people like us who run businesses, for people who represent the consumer in a company, I think what's important is for all of us who play any game, we had a reference to golf earlier. If you play tennis, just imagine if there was no net on the lawn. How would you play tennis? I mean, you can hit the ball anywhere and think you have had a good shot. I think for me, the marketeer is a person, he or she is the most important individual who keeps the balance between growth and profit, because that's the net. If I give a brief to Arun that I want to grow at 40% without the net, it's very easy to do it. It's not a challenge, believe me. Or if you say, just get me the profits, it goes on to impact you in the long term. Yeah? And that's the balance, in my opinion, a CMO or the person who leads the voice of the consumer in the organization actually brings to the play. And I'll keep on saying it's not about designation. It's about if you can represent the consumer voice, then you are the most impactful person. Now, to add to this, there has been a very, very big shift. It's happening. I had a chance to chat up with Sita before this, and we were discussing new age companies, D2C. What used to take 12 months earlier, the testing protocol, the consumer testing, creating an animatics, today can be done in probably a day. If there are people in this room who still would require 12 months to test a product end to end, then I have some bad news for you. Some D2C startup is going to go far ahead of you. And that's where the entire thing of I to the power of AI. I used to work in a digital company. There are some folks from that company sitting here. And you referred to how we use AI, normally to write our own poetry or to sort of send some funny stuff to friends. The amount of data you can consume to actually produce what are insights. Too often, trends are labeled as insight. I was in a creative briefing, and Varun knows, and they said, this is the consumer insight. I said, there is no consumer insight. Mothers love their children, it is like universal. I mean, what is the insight into this? Give me the nuance. And believe me, this comes from data. Yeah. So there was a day and age where you had to go and there was this one-way mirror through which you observe people. That day and age is slowly moving out and it's getting replaced. And I think it's very, very important for all of us to actually understand that. Yeah. And the CMO, in my opinion, is the person who balances the friction between all these parameters which tug at each other. Yeah, and that's the friction, the F, because that is the good friction. That friction makes sure that you make the right investments. This whole thing about what can give you, we just declared our results, and there was a reporter, and she asked me, so your cost of advertising is going up. Do you find anything odd in that statement? Why would a FMCG stroke CPG company call advertising a cost? The moment you start with that mindset, you are in the wrong place. Yeah, because our companies are only about people and brands. Yeah, and now how do you deploy that? Especially given the, I mean, I used to be a brand marketeer in a good, where you had GPRPs, CPRPs, you didn't have the digital world, you didn't have measurement challenges. That world has changed. Yeah. So that's the importance of a CMO. And I'll keep on adding that importance never, at least for me, comes from your designation. It comes if you can represent the voice of the consumer. A good CMO does not depend only on research to represent the consumer. Yeah, because sometimes we can be bogged down and research every element of a mix. I mean, then you don't have the feel for the consumer. You actually have to go back and check every Pantone shade, every flavor, every animatics. Um, so this is what I was talking about. And this is the formula I actually believe in, and that's what at Nestle we are trying to make ourselves better at. Um, you touched upon the technology piece. I think we are still 1 on 10. But when you have this meeting 6 months later, the world would have changed. Yeah, it's that pace. And anyone who does not keep pace would live by legacy, not the future. Yeah, I spoke about this. It's a very, very important thing. Sometimes people say, "What is your view?" And I would like to say, "Why would you ask my view? Tell me what is the consumer view." Tenure, number of years you've done something, does give you muscle. But if that voice starts overruling the consumer voice, uh, take it from me, for someone who spent 3 decades in this business, you're on the wrong path. Yeah. But it's very, very important to build that muscle to hear the consumer voice. It's not about more market research. And that's the mistake most companies do, that let's put more and more money behind trying to sort of research every aspect of it. And that's why the chief marketing officer is also the person who brings his or her understanding of the consumer voice onto the table. It's not just a research report which they bring to the table. I mean, if I had to push it a little further, this is what I think of the CMO. So when Varun sits on the management committee of the company, I look at every person and I look at Varun to tell me, please make your consumer heard. Um, there was an organization where they would leave a chair empty. Over time, we lost it somewhere. But it was the chair where the consumer was sitting. So there is a often asked question these days, geopolitical, inflation, monsoon, when are you taking up prices? And I call that intellectual laziness. Because what you've done is, you've said, before I try anything, just let me take the prices up. But if you spoke to your consumer who's managing his or her budget in 100 rupees, she has far more important things to take care of. For example, fuel costs, some of the other costs. And therefore, as marketeers, as people who run these and own these brands, I look at, and I'm just using Varun, sorry to put you in a spotlight, to tell me, guys, what are the other options we've tried? Yeah, and that's why, I mean, if you intellectually get lazy and don't hear your consumer, you would say, let's go for a price hike. Let's look at the margins. And margins is an internal metric. And I go back to my point. Once the internal opinions start overruling consumer voices, you have a lot of it might sound theoretical, but over the last 30 years, I have seen good marketeers do this time and again and succeed. I mean, if I had to push it a little further, extremely important in today's day and age. I mean, the complexity, when I come back and I look at a media briefing from people like Ghazal, I lose my way, because you have everything from e-commerce ads to social media to various new players coming in. The day of the old advertising system is gone, where you would write a brief, give it to the agency. Today, every part has such innovative uh, boutique solutions being offered that it is difficult to measure everything. And if you try to do that, you would end up spending more time measuring it than actually landing it. And that's where the CMO plays a very, very important. I mean, you referred to some of it, Rohit, in your presentation about the dollar, where is it going? That's the muscle a chief marketing officer gets to the table. Yeah, because some of it you have to go with your tribal knowledge, with your own experience. This is the discipline. Yeah, so marketing is, sometimes people, when I joined my first company, I always used to confuse my role with an advertising agency. I thought it was about making communication. And over time, I realized it wasn't. Yeah, it was to bring the discipline and the science of on how to manage a portfolio, where to invest the money, the attribution rigor which should go in terms of each of our activities, and of course the debate which is eternal, saying, do you invest in short time, thematic, promo films? But the CMO is a person who can bring this discipline and this art onto any company. Also important is he or she can be the momentum officer. Yeah, it's very, very important in today's day and age. It's easy to talk about this, but I just met someone from Perfetti, and I was telling him I have a group of people who run together. Yeah, I think Nikhil, the Perfetti CEO, is also there in that group. One of the things a lot of people look forward today is after they run to have a drink which sort of brings back some energy before you hit office, and that's coffee. Now, it is very, very important that at one point information was good enough. Now it's so important to engage the smaller groups, to actually get them talking about the benefits of what happens. And that's why the world is changing. I mean, what we used to talk about salience is so critical these days. And there are multiple examples. We have a, a pet business called Purina, and some of the best influencing pieces we get is from pet parents, because they actually put up pictures and talk about the fact that their cat only eats Felix or Friskies and does not eat anything. And that's where the whole role of engagement and salience is changing. Now remember, what's happening now in 6 months would further move on. And that's why you need an anchor point like a CMO to bring all of this together and to continue to build the discipline, continue to build the muscle around it. And that's the importance of a CMO. And therefore, like I said, at a day and age, I used to be an Axe brand manager. I would make one piece of communication and tell people to take edits out of it for your poster. It was a factory. Yeah, you put it in, you made the most efficient piece. It's no longer the right approach. Yeah, so from a factory you need to move to a lab. You need to experiment, and that's the technology piece comes in, because you can't test all of them. Yeah, and that's why I keep on saying, from having a one TVC to actually having 1,000 assets. And if we do it the way I used to do it, the chances of it working is very, very less as far as it comes to engagement and salience. So that's in a nutshell why the role of a CMO is very critical. The fact that they actually are just the way a finance person brings numbers, but he or she can own the consumer. A technical person brings the operational expertise, but they still also represent the consumer. But the loudest voice in a management committee or in the executive board of any company who represents the consumer should be the voice of the CMO. And which is why I strongly believe that this is a function with the right muscle, with the right training. It can definitely add significant enterprise value to any organization, especially companies which are consumer facing, CPGs, FMCGs. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to share this.
Thank you, Manish. If I could request you to remain on stage for just a couple of more minutes, would that be okay? And I'm just going to quickly check if we have questions from the audience. I'd like to request you to please raise your hands. We'll quickly pass the mics to you as well. I'd like to request you to introduce yourself before directing your question. But let's put some lights. Okay. First up, that's what they say. All right, I'm going to quickly pass my mic to you, Monica. Let's have your question right here.
Sorry, I'm making the most of the fact that we're hosting this, but I have to ask you this question, Manish. You said some fantastic things about the role the CMO plays in context of how it's evolving today. So if you had a chance to recoin the title of a CMO, what would it be after having looked at all of this?
Um, Monica, for me, I'm going to say something a little
Fair, fair,
controversial.
fair.
Um, I think more than designations, when I see a CMO, I'm going to keep on saying it's the loudest voice of the consumer. The way organizations are evolving, and Sita is here, and he can share a little bit about traditional designations are moving away. I still, Varun knows it. When someone says chairman and managing director, I look around me saying, who's are they talking about? But I think what is important for this forum, more than whether it's a CMO or the chief voice of the consumer, I think is what goes behind it. And what goes behind it is, do I represent the voice of the consumer in the board? Too many marketeers are becoming general managers. They are developing a lot of muscle on the finance side, and therefore, somewhere in their own heads, they optimize between the P&L and the consumer. So, I think the designation is good enough. We just need to add more and more muscle behind it.
Okay, helpful. Thank you so much.
It also prevents me from changing Varun's designation for the time being.
We're just going to check for one more question. We have room for one more question. Anybody else? Members of the audience? All right. Then on that note, if I could please request you, Rohit, to please come on stage to present a token of gratitude to Manish for joining us here, for your incredible presence, and thank you for, sort of making us relook at how we look at the term CMO. So I'm going to request you, Rohit, to please present a token of gratitude on our behalf. Can we have the loudest round of applause, everyone? Well, at this point, I'd also like to thank Perfetti Vanmal for being our gifting partner. And on that note, thank you once again, Manish, for joining us.